Hey everybody, this is my life. And this is my pipe. Wait, I don't have a pipe. I'm gonna try to tell you a little bit of a story that I've told before. This is more like a rough draft of what I'm trying to say. I'm gonna try to tell you this story all in one run. Just one run. It's 2019, October 12th, Saturday, 8:24 p.m. I'm gonna try to say this. I'm only gonna say this once, actually. I'm probably going to say it again, but it's very relevant. And some of you might be thinking, well, maybe you shouldn't really be telling the story. And some of you guys may know the story. I've told this story before, so you can try to guess what I'm talking about. It's a little bit of a love story, or a love less story, or more like a selfish little story of mine. Something about my life. It's relevant, so it's not like a story that is totally secret, so you could be like, oh, don't tell this story, but I'm going to try to tell the story. I'm going to try to let people know a little bit, because there's some lessons that can be learned, some lessons that I've been learning, and I was thinking about this. And so there's a lot of different lessons you can learn, and that's why you should try to talk about it, even personal stories. I mean, I guess maybe you shouldn't always talk about personal things, but at the same time, it's almost like it's inevitable. It's like something that you can't get away from in some situations, at least, and especially things that are already out there in the public. But one of the lessons that I've learned was that you really gotta take take it at one step at a time. All right. One lesson one lesson at a time, one step at a time, one day at a time, one thing at a time. Try not to take too many shortcuts, and try not to conflate your heart with the mind. And you see that when you do that, you may think you're doing the right thing at the time, but you may not be doing the most important thing. This is one of the things that I'm trying to say. One of the main points I'm trying to make in this video with telling the story is to say that you really need to try your best to seek after objective principles, and you really gotta try to take it a step at a time. So I'm going to try to tell this little story of something I did that I probably shouldn't have done, and I guess it doesn't really matter now. Looking back at it, it doesn't really matter in some ways, and it already happened. But at the same time, you can look at it and you can learn a few things from it, and that's the point. That's one of the points. Once upon a time, I was going to this place for the first time ever, and I was working with these people, and I would work there again and again. It was a daily thing that I was doing, and it was really good. In some ways, I really enjoyed working with these people, and I would always see the girl, and she was a little bit shorter than me, but I started liking her. But I was always telling myself that I don't really have time, or I may not have time, and in the future things may be different. I was struggling with doing all my homework, doing everything. I was distracted with trying to pay for college, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do after. I felt very distracted because I was doing the work study, and I was doing all these different classes, and I was looking for some part-time jobs at the same time. And I was trying to juggle through all these different things, and emotionally speaking, I was all over the place because I was just thinking about whether or not I would deserve anything, or whether or not anything would ever happen with me in my life, with whether or not I would be dating, maybe courting, eventually getting married, whether or not I would have a career, whether or not I would continue going to that college, the second college that I was in at the time, or whether or not I would go to other colleges or do other things. And at the time, I was in my early 20s. I'm just counting in my head how old I was. 19, 20, 21. I was 21 and 22 while I was there. And it's going through all these things. Now, I've told these stories before, and so some of y'all may know what I'm talking about, but I wanted to make some points about the story and what happened. Eventually, I was telling people about my little crush. You see, at the time, I felt like I didn't know what to do, and I felt like I had to do something. Actually, looking back at it, I can say that I didn't really need to do anything at all. But I was talking to different students, different friends of mine at the time, while this was all happening during the school year, and they gave me some advice. And I was on the internet asking for some advice too, and I wrote about it, and he eventually found out because he read some stuff, and maybe some people told her or something. But eventually, she found out, and she was like, "Hey, I know about this." And I was like, I really want to tell you a little bit more. I wanted to tell you the backstory. I wanted to tell you what was going on, specifically and personally, one-on-one. And so I put together something. I wrote, I printed out several different pages of the whole entire story, and I read it to her on one Friday evening. We met, and I was trying to tell her what was going on. And I just read it to her, and I gave her the papers that I wrote. And I was reading the story for like 30 minutes or so. And I was trying to tell her the story of how I met her and started liking her, and how I was thinking about dating her in a way, but not really. And that's one of the things that I think about now. I think about whether or not I communicate well enough to really try to say what I was trying to say, but at the same time, what I was saying wasn't really relevant enough. May have been relevant, but not relevant enough. And that's the interesting thing about it, because at the time, I was thinking that I really needed to let her know. Sometimes in life, you may think you need to do something or let people know, and sometimes it's not the best decision that you can make. It's not necessarily wrong. I mean, I'm not going to say whether or not it's wrong or not, but you can argue that it's not the best decision that you can make at the time. And it's all about taking your time to get to where you need. There's a lot of character development that you need to participate in the journey of the life of your life that you're trying to go through, that you're trying to be a part of. And this is what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that it was like I didn't really need to talk about it. I didn't really need to write about it. I mean, in some ways I needed to, because I was developing myself, and I was trying to figure these things out. And so, that the question, would you ever go back and change things? Go back in a time machine and change things. People could say yes. I generally say no, including even this. Like, I may not necessarily go back, but at the same time, I probably wouldn't do it again if I was back there. But it was an interesting thing to go through, And in life, you can go through these situations. And I'm trying to say this, that I'm trying to say, like it's one of those things that happens gradually and slowly. It's not like you wake up one day and you realize it. Looking back, you can see a lot of things. You can recognize a lot of mistakes retroactively. Retroactively. Ba ba boo. Bum bum bum. So it's like you can see it now when you go over the hill or when you're on top of the mountain. You can see a lot of things, but when you're down in the valley, you may not. And sometimes in life, you really need a shepherd. Sometimes you need a compass. Sometimes you need a White House. Wait, no, a lighthouse. Sometimes you just need the right thing in the right time, the right person at the right time. And the good news is there are people that came before us that can help us and guide us in the right directions. And I probably need a little bit more of that at the time. And that may have been one of the reasons why I ended up, doing some things that I probably shouldn't have done. Not necessarily the worst things, but not necessarily the best things either. And that's what I'm trying to say. So, one of the reasons why I'm saying this is because I'm a little bit surprised that my mind has changed so much in the past 15 years or so. I would say more closer to 13 years, but a long time nonetheless. Every year is a long time, or it can be, it probably should be a long time. You can learn a lot of things in the course of your life, and you can continue to develop, and that's what I'm trying to say. Right now I'm looking at the camera, but I'm choosing not to look at the camera, and I'm trying to tell a story. If you listen very carefully, I basically told the story. There's more information that might be on the internet that talks about the story in details. But like I said, a lot of it's not necessarily relevant. Maybe relevant, but I probably should just make this video again and make it a little bit shorter to say that sometimes you think something's the right thing to do at the time. You look back and it's not necessarily the best thing. And it's like you take that story that I was telling, for example, and you think, does it matter either way? If I were to, for example, if I were to date the girl, then should I tell her that, what I told her, if I was going to date the girl? The answer would be probably no. Now, if I were to not date the girl, would I tell her? Again, same answer, no. So you have two main possibilities. I mean, there could be a third or a fourth possibility. A lot of variables. But let's just say hypothetically, there are two, just two, that either I do or I don't. Either I do or don't date that girl. Either way, you probably shouldn't. I probably shouldn't have, but I did. But it wasn't relevant. Now, the reason why, if you don't know, reason why mainly is because it wasn't the right time. And you never know. And it wasn't the best choice. It wasn't the best decision at the time. Like I said already, I already said this, that you have to take it a day at a time. You have to take it a step at a time. And some things are not the most relevant. Life is very short, and you don't have time to say everything or do everything. So you may believe strongly that you really need to say this or say that, do this or do that, because of what you think may or may not happen. But you don't know. You can have a strong feeling from your heart. And that's a problem when you let your emotions guide your boat in your life. It can mess things up. This is what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that you should wait and pray, meditate, and really, really, really wait for the right moment. You really got to wait for the right moment. You got to really got to take it a step at a time. Otherwise, you mess things up a little bit, potentially. It could be arguably okay. Maybe not the worst thing. Like I said, maybe not really bad. Maybe not bad at all, but not necessarily the best. It's down here. It could be good, but it may not be the best thing in your life. This is what I'm trying to say. You see, it's distracting. You can distract yourself. You can distract the girl, the boy, the other person, the other people. When you say something that's not the best. When you do something that's not the best. In life, we do these things all the time. But when you realize that, then you could think about it a little bit. You could think about trying to stay on topic a little bit more. Trying to stay relevant a little bit more. Not perfectly, because we're not perfect. But it's about trying your best to really stay in the moment. And to not underestimate things that you think is impossible either way. When you try too hard to like prophesize the future, you put yourself in a box, possibly. At least in some situations, you may put yourself in the box. I kind of did. For example, this is one of the reasons why I'm trying to tell this story. And I may try to make more videos about this, maybe. And some of you could be like, oh, you don't do it. Don't do it. You can say, like, you don't need to do it. And you might be right. But at the same time, I believe that there's some relevance. There's some application in the illustrations of the stories of our lives. And that's why we have conversations with each other. That's why we don't only Google things. We talk to each other. Because we can learn from each other and have conversations and learn from stories of our lives. And that's why I have a blog. And I'm going to try to talk a little bit more about this later on. But until then, this is my life and this is my pipe. And eat some oatmeal.